Hi everyone, Cam here from Yes Auto, and today we are going to be looking at this thing. It is the Volvo XC40 P8 Recharge, and it's the company's first proper mass-produced electric car. Now that might seem quite strange because Volvo's electric offshoot is Polestar, and they've been making electric cars for a couple of years now. But with electric cars being so popular as are SUVs, it doesn't really come as a huge surprise that Volvo decided to electrify its ultra popular crossover. But the thing is, this thing doesn't have the space all to itself. The XC40 P8 Recharge has rivals such as the Volkswagen ID.4 and the Skoda Enyaq, and even its own Polestar 2. So why should your money go towards this particular Swede machine? Well, today we're going to find out. But before I get into the review, remember to hit the like button and subscribe because we've got plenty more awesome reviews just like this one. Now the Recharge is the kind of car you go for if you want an EV but you don't want to shout about it, because I mean, just look at it. It just looks like a normal XC40, but there are some subtle differences, and the main one is the grille, or the lack thereof, because we don't have an engine to keep cool, so there's no need for this to be mesh, it's just covered up, and it's the same colour as the bodywork, so if you want to hide that, best go for a black car. But on a brighter colour you can see the outline of the grille, so it's still distinctly Volvo. And we also have the Volvo badge at the front, a nice big badge with a secret camera beneath it. Moving further around, we've got the signature Thor hammer LED headlights. They come as LED as standard. You can upgrade to adaptive LEDs, but if you want matrix LEDs, which are the ones that are on full beam all the time and are really clever as to not blind people coming the other way, you can't actually get them on the Volvo, but you can do on some of the car's rivals, which is a bit of a shame. 19-inch wheels come as standard, but these are the 20s, unique to the Recharge, and I think they look absolutely stunning, although you will have to pay a bit more to get them. Rest of the car is pretty standard XC40 roofline, little Recharge badge just there to let you know this is the EV. This is usually the fuel port, but if I open it up, it is the charging port. More on that in just a wee bit. And moving further around, no need for exhaust, so it's completely blank underneath here. Plastic bumper at the bottom here, and to round it all off, a little P8 all-wheel drive Recharge badge. Of course, the great thing about having an SUV is a nice big boot. And in the back of the XC40, we have 452 litres, which is actually the same as what you get on the standard car. Now that's really interesting because a lot of electric cars and hybrid cars actually have slightly smaller boots because this is where all the batteries and motors are stored. But on the XC40, it's the same throughout the range. And that makes it a little bit bigger than something like a Kia e-Niro, but the Skoda Enyaq does have a bigger boot. And if you want to watch my review of that, click the link in the top right-hand corner. It's also only a little bit bigger than what you get on a Polestar 2. So if you're tossing up between the two cars, boot space might not be everything. Of course, the benefit of the XC40 is, being an SUV, you've got a nice big wide opening, whereas what you have on the Polestar is also a nice big wide opening because it's a hatchback. So they're really very similar. Anyway, conveniences in the back here. We have a 12-volt charger at the side over here, a couple of hooks integrated into the plastic, so if you want to hang your shopping up, you can do. Got a small little compartment over to the right-hand side here, and also a really nifty little floor, which not only opens up a nice big storage bin underneath it, which has some netting in it, but it also can work as a divider. So if you want somewhere to put, I don't know, some shopping that could spill all over the place and you've used up your hooks, just use the floor divider. And unlike a lot of the XC40's rivals, we actually have a front boot, or frunk. Now it's not massive at just over 30 litres, but it's enough space to store the charging cables, which is really very handy. And it's at this point I would usually talk about the motor in a petrol car, but We don't have an engine, so I'll talk about the electric motors while I'm here. So what we have is actually two electric motors, one at the front of the car and one at the rear, and they work together to give you all-wheel drive. So if you wanted to take this off-road, you theoretically would have the traction to do so. It also means this thing is seriously powerful. When those two motors are working together, you have 402 brake horsepower and 660 Newton meters of torque. That is like supercar levels of performance in what is essentially a family crossover. It's just hilarious. In fact, this thing will go from 0 to 62 miles an hour in 4.9 seconds. It's mad. Now those motors are connected up to a 78 kilowatt hour or 75 kilowatt hour usable capacity lithium-ion battery, which is good for a range of a very specific 259.1 miles. In fact, that's actually increased ever so slightly lately, courtesy of an over-the-air update, which is essentially Volvo launching a software update for the car, so you don't need to take it into a showroom. Realistically, you're probably going to get around 200 or just above when you're using this car with air conditioning or heated seats, which isn't bad, but you do get a better range on something like a Volkswagen ID.4, and even the Polestar 2 gives this thing a run for its money as well. Still, it's pretty fast at charging up. If you find a 150 kilowatt charger, you'll be able to go from 0 to 80% battery in just 40 minutes, which is very fast. So how much does the P8 Recharge cost? Well, it depends how you look at it, because the outright fee is £49,950, and that's a lot of money. It's about the same price as a Polestar 2, which is arguably a little bit more luxurious. More on that in just a bit. And it's also not eligible for the government's plug-in car grant because it costs more than £35,000. However, Volvo says most people won't buy its cars like that anyway. It'll use its subscription service. So it means you're paying a monthly fee of £649 over the course of 3 years and 30,000 miles. And if you add all that up, it means you're paying around £23,300. Now, sure, that just sounds like a PCP deal, right? Well, you're not actually paying a deposit, you just go straight into it, a bit like a lease. And if you compare that with a Polestar 2, it's about £100 more expensive per month, but the Polestar, you're going to have to put down a deposit of nearly £7,000. So they're really very equal when it comes to the monthly payments. You can actually get an upgrade package for this as well, which includes a very good Harman Kardon sound system, a panoramic roof which is controlled through touch controls and is really cool, and you also get a 360-degree camera, among other things. Now the overall cabin feels very familiar to the XC40, which is not necessarily a bad thing because the XC40 is a really nice car, very lovely place to be. However, prices start around £25,000 for a base XC40, and when you're paying 50 grand, it does feel a tad on the cheap side, but it's not terrible. We've got these really lovely vents with metal dials on the side, and they do feel very premium. And we've also got this pretty nice finish on the dashboard here, which continues on the doors, and if you go for, again, that options pack, you get the Harman Kardon speakers, which look really nice. You also get this really quite nice infotainment screen. Now, it takes a bit of getting used to, as most systems do, but it runs on Google. And you can tell it was made by a tech company and not a car company because it's so fluid. And they must use really good processors in here, because even some of the really high-end cars I go in, as soon as you go onto the sat-nav screen, it just becomes this chuggy, sluggish mess. But in the Volvo, and it's the same in the Polestars, they are ultra crisp and super slick. It feels like I'm using an iPad, which is exactly what I want when I'm driving and I need it to be as responsive as possible. Storage is pretty damn good here as well. We've got a wireless phone charger in the center console with two little storage trays either side. We've got what looks like an ashtray, which is a little bizarre. We've got two very decent cup holders with good grips at the side, so if you're really flinging your Volvo around, your coffee shouldn't be going all over the passenger. And then you've got this kind of cool little bin back here. So if I were to lift this up, I've already got a nice big storage bin here, but I've also got a little detachable bin as well. And when I say bin, I mean it really does look like a bin with a little pop-up lid. Really very, very handy. And again, if you take it out, you've got so much space, and Volvo recommends that you pop your keys in there as well. As for connectivity, we've got a couple of USB-C chargers down here, and of course the system is wireless as well, so if you want to sync up your contacts and your music, you can do that without plugging in. There's also a nice cup holder in the driver's door down here, and unlike the ID4, you actually get this really nice line door inserts, which is actually predominantly made from recycled plastic bottles, and it feels really nice. That's the general feel of the XC40. It's a very nice feeling car, although I think if you are tossing up between this and the Polestar has the edge. And if you want to watch my review of that, click the link in the top right hand corner where we go through all the cabin and much more. The back of the Recharge is quite a peculiar place to be because I've got loads of room, but comfort is a bit of a mixed bag. So I've got the driver's seat in my position and I'm just under 6 foot, but I've got loads of space back here for both leg and headroom, and we've also got the panoramic roof installed, which usually cuts into headroom a little bit, but still, if you're over 6 foot, you're going to be more than comfortable back here. But what I find a little bit strange though is that the seats are really flat. So what we find in a lot of electric cars now is that you kind of sink into the rear seats where the front is raised and the rear is lowered, so you kind of sink into them. But on the Volvo, as you can see, there's a big gap between where my leg is and the base of the seat. So it almost feels like they're sat just a little bit too low. In this model though, they are leather and they do feel really rather comfortable, but I think you would need to stretch out to feel like you would be having the most comfortable experience on a long journey. We've also got a pair of USB-C charging ports down here, some lovely air vents, and also heated rear seats too, which is very lovely. It'll eat into battery life, but I'll take it. You know, I'll never get over the sensation of getting into an electric car and pulling away in complete silence. And even after coming out of really refined petrol cars, nothing really beats an EV for a really relaxing and calming drive. And this XC40 Recharge is no exception. It is such a smooth beast. And I mean beast because it's seriously fast. I'll get onto that in just a little bit. Now in some electric cars, when you get them up to speed, it can all fall away a little bit because the wind noise becomes more present, and because you often have big wheels in them, you tend to get a little bit more road noise that comes through. But not in the XC40 Recharge. It is a really calm and quiet place to be. And even when you're up to speed, it's almost silent. So you've got that real feeling of Swedish refinement and luxury, which is kind of what you would expect when you're paying 50 grand on a family crossover. Okay, I've done all the sensible stuff. Time to talk about the performance, because it is so incredibly fast in this car. I just can't believe something this, I don't want to say it's dinky, it's not exactly a small car, but it's definitely got quite cute looks to it. It's just so ridiculously fast. It feels, if not a little quicker actually, than the Polestar 2. That's probably because we've got a bit more mass and because we do move around a little bit under acceleration. But my goodness, this thing is a fast car. And we've also got one pedal driving on here as well. So in the setting I've got it on at the moment, the brakes regen quite hard when you lift off the accelerator, which is good because it means it's putting more power into the battery. But it does mean that if you, say, floor it and then come off the accelerator, you will lurch forward and feel quite ill. But that also brings me on to the point of the P8 Recharge, because yes, it's got a pretty good range, and is ridiculously fast, but it is also a very expensive car. And I think really for the money, there are better cars that are out there. If I wanted something that felt a little bit sportier, then I would probably go for the Polestar 2. If I wanted something a bit more practical, I'd probably go for a Skoda Enyaq. And while the Skoda doesn't feel as luxurious as the Volvo, it is cheaper and still feels really quite well equipped. Where I think the XC40 will come into its own though is if they release one with a smaller battery or a less powerful motor. Let's say one that's rear wheel drive or front wheel drive. Because if they can knock off the price, let's say take it down to £40,000 and you're looking at something that's not quite as powerful but still has really decent range, I think this would be such a fantastic choice of car. But I'd like to know what you think. Which would you go for? This or the Polestar 2? Or would you just go, screw it, I'll wait for a Tesla Model Y? Let me know down in the comments. And of course, if you're looking for a deal, just head over to yesauto.com, because while these are going to be £50,000 new, I'm sure you'll be able to save a fair amount when they hit the used market.